The Talmud in Masechet Pesachim tells us something very interesting. It tells us that there are 7 things that an individual will never know. And I'll quote to you what the Talmud says, all 7 of them. Number 1, it says, Yom HaMitah, the day of a person's death, a person will never know. Number 2, Yom HaNechama, the day of consolation. Whenever someone is worried about something, or they're going through something, they're never going to know while they're going through it when it's going to be done. And the reason is because then they won't worry about it. You know that tomorrow will be fine. You know that in a week, in a year, whenever it is, so you won't be worrying about it because it's all going to be taken care of. So number 1 is Yom HaMitah, the day of death. Number 2, Yom HaNechama, the day of consolation. Number 3, Omek Hadin, the depth of the judgment, which means no matter how many lawyers and how many judges are ever involved in any type of court case, nobody will ever know the truth, or as we like to say, the truth of the truth, because that is reserved to God. As lawyers and judges, we just try to hope and bring out honesty and justice. But Omek Hadin, the depth of the judgment, is reserved to God. No one will ever know. Number 4, Bema mistacher, meaning, in what is a person going to be successful in? What business deal is going to be successful? You never know going into it. If everyone knew going into it that it would be successful, then everyone would just constantly be investing or opening or doing. It's a risk factor. And to that, no one knows whether it's going to be successful or not. The next is, Ma belibo shel chavero. What is in the heart of someone else? What is someone's intentions when they give you a hug? What is someone's intentions when they criticize you? Or constructive criticism? Or when they do anything else seemingly good to you, when they bring you a present, when they praise you, when they compliment you. Nobody knows what's in the heart and mind of someone else. And that is something that we won't know. The next is, number 6, Malchut bit David matai tachzor limkoma. When is Mashiach going to come? No one knows. It's something that only God knows. And the final one is Malchut hayevet matai techale. When is a evil rulership, an evil king, an oppressor, when is their reign going to cease? And again, only God knows. Based on the Talmud, Zera Shimshon now asks a question. If we look in chapter 27, verse 2, after Isaac says, I'm getting old because my eyes are dimming, then he says, Vayomer hinena zakanti. He calls his son Esav, he says, I'm getting old. Lo yadati yom moti. I don't know the day of my death. I don't know when I will die. The Zera Shimshon says, quite interesting. No one knows when they're going to die. What is Isaac adding by saying, I don't know the day of my death? It would have been good enough to say, I'm getting old and I feel like I'm dying. Or just I'm getting old. Why is Isaac going out of his mind saying, I'm getting old and I don't know the day of my death? No one knows. And to this, the Zera Shimshon answers with a midrash. The midrash tells us that there were 2 individuals who actually knew the day Mashiach would come. One being Isaac himself. 2 being his son, Yaakov. What was Isaac's purpose? He had a 3-pronged plan. He said, I'm going to have my son, my favorite one, Esav, do a mitzvah for me, kibud and prepare me a meal. Number 2, I'm going to now be able to bless him. Number 3, I'm going to be able to reveal to him when the day of Mashiach is going to be. That was his plan. It didn't go according to. God didn't want it that way. His plan of having Esav feed him. It wasn't Esav that fed him. It was really Rivka that fed him through Yaakov. Then he wanted to bless Esav. He ended up blessing Yaakov. He came. He wanted to reveal and tell him the day that Mashiach was going to come. And it vanished from him. He couldn't. Yaakov, the same thing happened. At the end of his life, he's there. He has all of his children. He blessed each one. Some of them he rebuked. And then he was ready to tell them when the day of Mashiach was coming. And it was withheld from him. Even though he knew it, he couldn't articulate it at that moment. God didn't allow it. The Zera Shimshon says, we might have thought, anyway, since Yitzhak already is breaking the rule of this Gemara. The Gemara says 7 things a person doesn't know. But number 6, when Mashiach comes, Isaac knew. Maybe he also knew the day of his death. Isaac is coming and saying, no, I don't know that. God gave me through prophecy for a specific reason that I should know the day of Mashiach. I guess the reason was not to pass it on, but that was an exception to the rule. Out of all the 7, that was the only one that the rule was broken for Isaac and for Jacob. But Isaac did not know the day of his death, so he had to go out of the way to prove to his son, even though I know when the Mashiach's going to come and I want to tell it to you, I first need you to follow the steps. Kibud ava'em, blessing, and then I'll give it to you. But I don't know the day of my death. Let's do it quick. It might be soon. And the Zera Shimshon continues and says, what is the reason why a person does not know the day of their death? Why couldn't we know? As long or as short of a life. When a person is born, maybe on their birth certificate, the doctor should also write, this one's till 70, this one 80, this one 90, this one 100. Lo alenu, this one less, chas v'shalom, but it happens. Why not? So listen to what the Zera Shimshon says the reason is not. He says this is not the answer. Don't say, because if a person knows when they're going to die, they're going to sin the whole life until the last minute and do teshuvah. They know that they're going to pass away at 85. Yalla, 84 years, party, party, party. Sometime in that 85th year I'm going to pass away. That's when I'll do teshuvah. I'll start Shabbat then. I'll lay off the ham and the lobster and any other things. I'll start putting on tefillin then. The Zera Shimshon says that's not the reason why. You know why? The Gemara in Masechet Yevamot says that when a person does things which are wrong, then their life is shortened. The Gemara over there is speaking about a debate. The debate is when a person is born, is there a decree on how long they're going to live or not in Shamayim? One opinion says no. Another opinion says yes. But both opinions, both agree that even though a person's time has, even though a person has an expiry date, nevertheless, a person that does things which are wrong, a person which does things which are wicked, can make that date that was set to come earlier. So therefore you cannot say now that because a person will now do all bad and one day he'll do teshuvah, maybe that's the reason why God doesn't tell us when our date of passing is. No, because if that would be the case, a person would pass away earlier. So this is what he says rather. He says sometimes the same way God takes people back to Shamayim as a punishment, sometimes he does so as a favor. Wow, as a favor? How so? Him amongst others say, look at the average age of the 10 generations which took place from Adam till Noah. If we take those 10 generations, the average age from father to son, the way the Torah brings it out, if you exclude one person, because one person throws the whole graph off, okay? If you take out Hanoch, which was the 7th generation, add up the age of the 9 from Adam to Noach minus Hanoch, you divide it by 9 to get their average. It was an average of 912 years old. That was the average life expectancy. You know how old Hanoch was when he died? He was 365 years old. He was just over a third of the regular life expectancy. Why? What did he do to die so early? You know what the Mefarshim tell us? Rashi tells us on the spot at the end of Parashat Bereshit. Hanoch actually was a good man. He was a tzaddik. But at age 365, at the ripe age comparatively, right, of 365, he already started thinking, wow, look at the world I live in. I want to indulge. I want to do this. I want to do that. Maybe it's not the will of God. These thoughts started entering his mind, and God said, you know what? It's very rare to have a tzaddik during this time. He's going to take his life then, at an earlier age. Better that he passes away righteous than he lives longer and corrupts himself and comes to Shamayim, comes to heaven, not being in merit, rather being and coming and developing to be evil. Based on this, the Zera Shimshon says, our neshama is a piece of God, and God lends it to us. And sometimes, even though He intended on lending it maybe for so long, stuff changes. Certain people who are overly wicked, God summons them earlier. People who are so pious sometimes someone passes away and we can't explain why. And we say, they're Malach Hashem, they're one of God's angels, and He summoned them back to be with them. That is true. That could happen. And he finishes off with, I think, a very nice concept. The Shulchan Aruch codifies in Laws of Business, in Hoshen Mishpat, the final volume of his codification of the law, the one that deals with business. He writes over there that when an individual lends something to someone, he is able to go collect it back from the borrower at any time if they didn't give a date when they're coming to take it back. Lending, I'm not even renting it. I'm lending something to someone. At any time I could come back and collect it if I didn't tell them when I need to come take it back. If it was just lent, not saying when. But if I lend something to someone, the halakha says, and I tell them I'm lending it to you for a week, a day, a month, whatever it is, even though I'm not making any money on it, because it's not being rented, it's only being lended, I cannot go and collect it prior to that set time. Even though I'm doing you a favor by lending you it, no. You set a time, you set a date, I cannot come earlier to collect it. According to that, the Zera Shimshon said, that's why God never told a person or tells anybody when their date of death is going to be. Because if God would tell a person that they're passing away at 85 or 95, God cannot come back and collect that neshama earlier because He lent it to us and then He would told us when He's coming to get it back. Then He could never alter it. He could not make it later and He could not make it earlier. And for that reason, the Zera Shimshon says, God did not tell us and will not tell us our day of death. Yes, there's the aspect of it could happen at any time, and we should try to use our life to its fullest, use every moment as an opportunity to do the right thing. But if we would know when it was, maybe we're not going to work so hard. And for the fact that it was lent to us, our life is a gift. It's a piece of God, our neshama that He's lending to us. He could never tell us when it is. I'll end with a short story of a true story of a man who came to his rabbi and told him, Rabbi, I was diagnosed with a very serious eye condition, and within a month, the doctors are saying I will be completely blind. The rabbi tells him, wow, that's pretty severe. But it's okay. We'll take it for the positive. Life is still good. And then the man tells his rabbi, but Rabbi, how am I going to learn Torah? I won't be able to read. What am I going to do? He said, don't worry, you'll find someone to learn with. It's okay. But what about at nighttime? Or what about when someone else is not available and I need to learn and I won't be able to read? What am I going to do then? So the rabbi tells him, good idea. Start from the beginning of the Talmud and start learning off by heart, page by page. As slow as you go, it doesn't matter. Whatever you know, it's better than nothing. And he started one page and another page and another page. The end of the month came, he knew half of the first volume. And he still had his eyesight. He kept on learning. Finished the first volume, the second, the third. Couple years passed and the man never lost his eyesight. And he found himself knowing approximately half of the Talmud off by heart. That means that each and every person can do those things. If we really want to, we can do anything. What we have to realize is our life is timed. And we don't know when it's going to be. Isaac didn't even know when it was going to be. But we should take this lesson to heart. To try as much as possible to utilize, to maximize the time we have. The time we have with our spouses, the time we have with our children, our family, our friends. The time we have with God. The time we dedicate towards prayer. The time we dedicate towards Torah study. To make it the best bang for our buck. To make it the most successful for that time that's allotted to those activities. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us to always be mindful of this concept, to push ourselves, to be our best in every situation. Amen v'amen.